I've just got off a call where we've just had to fire our very first staff member in one of my companies. But before I get into that, I'm Aaron Henriquez, an entrepreneur with a few companies in the UK and Dubai. I've been an entrepreneur for 15 plus years. I was a police officer for 10 years in London, and I'm sharing my experiences so that you don't make the same mistakes that I have done in the past. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give brief information about what led up to the situation where we've ended up having to have this call today where we've let someone go, the reasons behind that and what should be done going forward. And as always, please like, subscribe and leave a comment if you've ever been in a situation like this. Share this with someone that you know. If you feel like you know someone who perhaps should be thinking about letting a staff member go, who may be in a similar situation, then share this with them so that they can help make their decision a bit earlier on. So as I've said, in one of the companies I'm invested in, we've had a staff member for quite a while. It was our first staff member, and it's the first time that my business partner has had to manage anyone. Now, this particular staff member was hired for an outbound sales role. And at the very beginning, we all sat down and had to think about targets. These targets were really based on what my business partner was actually achieving consistently, week on week, month on month. We put in targets based on that, but actually slightly lower. And then we agreed with the staff member that this would be their targets, their minimum expectations while they're getting started with us. And of course, they agreed. They said it's more than comfortable for them to do that. I am a silent partner in this business. I'm not running the company, so I don't want to be stepping on the director's toes. Does that make sense? I do look at the statistics though of what's going on, and I spotted very early on that this particular staff member wasn't hitting their target or anywhere near. I was thinking, well, what are the reasons behind that? Because the main target that we were looking at that point is sort of outbound calls. What sort of outreach had they done? And after a couple of weeks, I had a catch up with my business partner. She spoke to me a bit about it, had a few concerns, and we discussed, well, what's the issue? What has the staff member said? And is there anything else that we can do to really support them to make it so that they could actually hit their targets? I have worked in a call center many, many years ago, nearly 2 decades ago now. And we used to see this sort of pattern with people making outbound calls is they'll do everything else but make the call. And that is something that you need to break really early on. And that certainly where I used to work before, they used to do it very early on, or they would get rid of people. And this is something that we then started seeing was a consistent pattern. Now, my business partner, she loves to see the best in everyone. And just because they're not making dials doesn't make them a bad person anyway. It just means they're not necessarily fit for that role. She wanted to see the best in them, give a bit more time. Now, what then occurred is that the bit more time went from 1 month to 2 months to 3 months to 4 months. During that time, my business partner knew that she was going to be off for a period of time for her own personal reasons, and really needed to rely on this member of staff to be making sure that they're making their calls and self-managed and stuff. Now let me rewind a bit, because this particular member there, during their interview, we did find out all their goals, where they want to be and stuff like that. So they wanted to be in a team leader role within a year, so that we hire more staff and they become their team leader. But it was agreed early on that, well, we don't need a team leader now because you're the first one. So what we do need is someone to do the sales role and need to demonstrate that you'll be able to do this sales role, so that when you are speaking to your staff, you are speaking with some authority to say, yeah, look, I've done this, and be able to help them out in achieving their goals. So anyway, after a few weeks, I was looking at the statistics and thinking, well, they're not achieving their targets. They're not even anywhere near their minimum targets. And this had happened consistently over a couple of weeks. For me, that was a very early indication that they're not going to be fit for the business going forward. This was discussed multiple times back and forth between me and my business partner, and she was really fighting his corner. I've made it really clear now that my business partner is running the business, they're the managing director, I'm effectively a shareholder and mentor for her, but I'm not going to be strong-arming her in making decisions for the vast majority of things. This is really catastrophic to the company. I made a decision, which I spoke about in a previous episode, that I need to give her that leeway to make a decision and deal with the consequences of that decision, but give her that confidence to say, yes, this is what I want to do, and go ahead and do it and see the result at the end. So that's when, a couple of months in now, we've had more discussions on the performance we're seeing. So when she brought the issue to me and we were talking about it, I eventually did the Andy Frisella thing of just saying, look, what do you think we should do? Because she's asking me what to do, and I'm like, well, what do you think you should do? So she said what she wanted to do. I wasn't that keen on it, but I was happy for her to go ahead, and I'd be very surprised from what I know of in the past of people changing drastically, which would have required a drastic change in behavior. But do you know what? You go and try that and see if that works. And the long and short of it, ultimately it didn't in the end. And what ended up happening was she eventually got to the stage where she sat down with the staff member one day and spoke to them and really set targets, let them set their own targets over a month period to see where that would be. Now, I think my business partner knew in her mind that if those targets weren't hit, then that would have been the end of the road for them. Unfortunately, those targets were not hit, not even a third of it. And those targets were really, really low, far below the expectations or requirements of the business. One of the reasons I kept hearing was about it's a tough market at the moment, and that is true. However, my issue is that, yes, the market is tough, but it doesn't matter how tough the market is, it doesn't stop you from picking up the phone and dialing and speaking to contacts, making yourself known to contacts who, when the market does pick up, may well remember you, and there's someone that you can reach out to when things start picking up. But not calling them isn't going to help you complete the track to get deals on the board. And so if someone's got a particular target, let's say X amount of calls per week, it doesn't stop you from making those calls just because it's a tough market, particularly when data is given to you. That was really my argument in the thing. And that was something I expressed to my business partner several times, because she was going down that thing of like, yeah, it is a tough market, so things are tough right now. But that wasn't really the issue for me. The issue was the most core thing they need to do was actually make those calls out, and they weren't doing that. That was something that for me is unforgivable, in the sense that I can't forgive you for it being a tough market if you're not even getting a third of the calls that you said you would do, which is probably about 20% of what we actually expected of them. And so that was why that person was let go in a call today. And there's been lots of stuff as well about the stats are wrong and all these systems and stuff. And we're using companies owned by multi-billion-dollar companies. There's a few different systems and they're all saying the same thing. Do you think Google, HubSpot, and our call provider Vonage stats are all wrong? Or is it just you? And so that was really the end of it for us. My belief, and something I've been saying for at least a couple of months, is that I do not think it's fair to keep someone where you're aware of their goals and we're already aware that they're not going to be suited for that particular role or where they want to be within the company, because they're not demonstrating certain behaviors very early on, which would be required for that team leader role, that sort of self-discipline, target-driven type person. And I don't think it's fair in keeping someone on that basis. It's not fair to them. It's not fair on the company. The company's spending money on this person to not bring anything back in, which is what they were hired to do. And like I said, had they made the calls out and been speaking to people, those people were saying, look, we haven't got anything on at the moment, any deals to place with you at the moment, that would have been forgivable to an extent. We might have worked on how can we optimize things a bit more in some way, or the sales pitch or whatever. That would have been more forgivable in that sense, in the sense that, yes, that's a tough market, but not making the calls, it doesn't matter if it's a tough market or not, because you're not even making the calls. So anyway, it's not fair for the company, it's not fair for him. He's not going to achieve the goals that he wants to achieve with our business. And it was really tough getting rid of someone who is actually a really nice person. They're super nice, family orientated, very knowledgeable. Had our company been much bigger, there definitely could have been other places the person would have been suited for. But for now, it's just not right for the size of company. So really, the lesson here, for me, you do need to give people a bit of time to settle into a new company and for them to get the performance on. You need to also drill down into what is the most basic core task that's specific and measurable and achievable. You need to have that and understand what is it. The markets are tough in the industry that we're in at the moment, so there is no argument with that. And I think that would be really difficult for us to say, well, you need to make X amount per month right now. But the real core target that is achievable, regardless of the market conditions, is the amount of outbound attempts that you make. Whether it's calls or emails, that is within your control. And if you're working on targets which are a quarter of actual expectations, and the expectation is set from the basis of the director who had done this herself whilst also running the business, that should definitely be achievable for someone to do. So really the lessons here are, had it been me running this, I would not have given them 4 months leeway where they hadn't even been making the calls. That would have been maybe a couple of weeks. And if I wasn't seeing the improvement then that would have been end of for me. And so if you're in that position as well, where you've got a staff member underperforming, but you don't want to lose the time invested, you've invested a lot of time in this person, potentially a lot of money, and then to cut them off, it's a complete loss for you. You then have to start again from the beginning. But I have learned over time, I've hired and fired so many people over the years, that it's better to cut them out very early on when you see that they're not right for your business. It doesn't make them a bad person at all. It just means they're not right for your business, your values, how you want to work within your organization. It's better to get rid of them very early on when you see their behaviors are not aligned to what your expectations are, and not drag it out for them, because ultimately you drag it out for them, it costs you money to do that, and they may be suited somewhere else in a different role or just in a different company and perform really well somewhere else. But they're going to need to go away and start from zero again as well. It's not just you starting from zero. They're having to go and start from zero and find another job, start again from the beginning, learn new systems, learn new ways of working in that new company and stuff. They can't get their time back. My company will make its money back that it's spent out on this staff member, but they will never get their time back. They are now a few months older, a few months further down the line where they could have already settled in somewhere else. So I think from the selfish point of view of your company and the point of view of the member of staff, if they're not a right fit, let them go early on. And it's not easy. It's not easy knowing that you're letting someone go. They may not have anywhere else to go to. You might not have another contact that you can put them in touch with. And for a lot of people, even if you did, the person that you're referring them to may not want to take them. You also need to be more thoughtful in how you hire people from the very beginning and really understanding their goals, their skills, their achievements and stuff. But ultimately, you never know until they actually start with you. So anyway, I'm going to have a debrief with my business partner next week, and we're going to go over a few things which I've been making notes of over the months to analyze, well, what happened and at what point did we identify at the earliest opportunity that actually he wasn't going to work, and really go over that and put systems in place now to ensure that if we do have that situation again, that we pull the plug very early on, much earlier than this occasion. I think my business partner is going to be keen on that going forward, but for me, every excuse you can possibly come out with, I've seen it, I've heard it, and I see those patterns very early on. I think it's really important though that my business partner does get the scope and opportunity to make decisions, even if they're not the right ones, to give her that confidence to ensure she's not scared to do something that displeases me, if that makes sense, or where I'm going to start hammering her over something which actually, like I mentioned in the previous video, I found myself doing and it didn't help her. So giving a bit more latitude, giving a bit more leeway to do stuff is really important, I believe. If you found yourself in a similar situation, you might find a different approach works in your business about giving people more time or less time. The old company I used to work with, they get rid of people in a few days. If they weren't doing the very core basics, they get rid of them. Anyway, if you've got something to add to this, let me know. If you know someone who's constantly moaning about one of their members of staff, about something that they're doing or not doing, most likely, share this with them, because maybe this is what they need to hear, to have that confidence just to be like, look, let's pull the plug now. And it's better off for everyone. Better off for them, better off for you. Anyway, watch this video. I'm gonna go, it's getting warm. Yeah,